Hey everyone, this is acyuta-bhava from Nightlight Astrology. Happy Friday, everybody. Today I am going to take a look at Mercury's upcoming sextile to Jupiter, which is actually happening on Monday, early Monday morning, so Sunday night into Monday morning, depending on which time zone you're in. But this is a transit that you will be feeling over the weekend and is really toning the very beginning of next week. Um, and in a sense, we would be, if we covered it on Monday, it might almost be a little after the fact. So I felt like we should do it today, and get everybody sort of set up for it over the weekend. Um, what's interesting about this transit is that Mercury has been through this sextile with Jupiter already, right after Mercury turned retrograde in the early degrees of Gemini, um, uh, earlier this spring. So we're in a sense revisiting a transit that's already happened, and that's going to shape a few of the things we have to say today. So I'm just going to give you 5 very specific themes to watch for over the weekend into Monday. You could feel it probably Tuesday or Wednesday, something like that. And that'll be our project for the day going into the weekend. I'm still in a hotel room right now on a retreat, yoga retreat with my family. So if the audio and video aren't the greatest, my apologies. We'll be back into business. I might, because we're getting back late on Sunday, I might be recording one more here for Monday in the hotel room, but then we'll be back to normal, and the production value should be a little bit better. So I appreciate all of you and your patience. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share your comments. That helps people find the channel, especially people who are interested in astrology content. Helps it grow in the search algorithm. So always appreciate if you like and share your comments. Click the notification bell for updates if you want to find a transcript of any of my daily talks. There on my website, nightlightastrology.com. Okay. Well, Mercury's sextile to Jupiter is happening on May 20th. And because I'm on my laptop, it's actually really kind of complicated for me to pull up the real-time clock. So you just take my word for it. And without me giving you the visual this time, Mercury will be sextile in Jupiter very early morning, Sunday into Monday. This is from the early degrees of Gemini into the early degrees of Aries, Mercury being in Gemini, Jupiter being in Aries. This is, in effect, the same sextile that happened after Mercury turned retrograde. And let me go back. Actually, I'll just go back a little ways so that we can refresh on that. So that would have been Mercury turned retrograde in May, and it made the sextile with Jupiter right. Let's see if I can get the exact date up. It would have been, gosh, looks like it was right around May 18th or so. And so this is a rehashing of that same transit. The reason that's important is because we've gone through a Mercury retrograde process. And so the very first thing that I'm going to talk about today in my 5 things to watch for, is with reference to the fact that Mercury is now going back through a transit that it's already made. So the first thing I have to say in terms of what to watch for over the weekend and early next week with Mercury in Gemini, sextile in Jupiter and Aries is implementing, starting, or maybe even completing projects, negotiations, ideas that come from the past, probably the past month or two. The reason for this is that, again, Mercury stationed, turned retrograde, hit a sextile to Jupiter, went back into Taurus, stationed, turned direct, is now back in Gemini, where it is now hitting Jupiter again by sextile. So the idea that you're getting a burst of energy, and that you might be starting or implementing something that you tried to get started back in May, but were temporarily delayed in, or set back in, is, I think, one of the most likely possibilities for this transit over the weekend. So implementing or starting something that you meant to get started maybe a month ago, but for whatever reason, there's been some delays or some adjusting that's needed to be done. That would be a big one to watch for. It could be that you're also just completing something that, again, you've been working on and, maybe ironing out details or adjustments for, again, probably about a month or so. And now you're getting to the point where you can move forward, or you're even finishing up something that you've been finagling, for maybe like, since maybe even the early part of May, back when Mercury turned retrograde. I think that's probably the biggest one to watch for. For example, some of you may know that the annual Kickstarter that I do, and all of you so generously donate and support this channel every year. At the end of the year, I do a fundraiser. One of our goals from 2 years ago, as well as this past year, was to part of one of our stretch goals was to build an herbal medicine garden on our land. We have about an acre, and with the idea being that we would use the garden for teaching and distributing herbal medicine to people for free. And that we got majorly delayed on right around the time Mercury entered Gemini and turned its retrograde, because we found out that part of our land is like federally protected wetland, because it's near sort of an offshoot of a lake. And so what we thought was just kind of a little bit of a marshy area that we would be having to work around, or whatever, has like all of these rules and sanctions around it, and we had to like adjust the whole building plan. And now we just got word here, as soon as Mercury went direct and entered Gemini, that the new plans with all of the rules in mind are ready to go. So we were like, oh, okay. And I, as an astrologer, I was like, oh, it makes total sense. Especially since the delay came as Mercury turned retrograde, and the new plan was proposed as Mercury retrograde was hitting Jupiter. And then finally, all of the kinks were ironed out, and now we're ready to actually implement that new plan, probably in the weeks ahead. But we're sending in the first payment to get going with the project. And thanks to all of you. You guys are responsible for building that. And hopefully, by next planting season, we will be, a big batch of herbal medicine that my wife makes will be, supporting people who need it around us, around our community and stuff like that. So really, just really a cool thing that we wouldn't have been able to do without all of you, and a perfect illustration of the astrology too. So yeah. So number 2, anytime that Mercury hits a trine or a sextile to Jupiter, the potential for growth is there, like ideas that grow, whether that's in marketing or business, or almost like a mathematician or a physicist finally discovering that missing piece to a larger puzzle. Mercury and Jupiter, when positively connective, are oftentimes about invention, innovation, inspiration, or creative problem solving. And so things sort of falling into place, problems getting fixed, solutions to complicated issues, or agreement or consensus being reached when there has been disagreement. I'm not surprised, for example, that as Mercury goes back into Gemini, I read in the news, and I haven't read for a few days now, but I read as Mercury was entering Gemini that there was some kind of bipartisan legislation about guns and in the United States, which is a very big issue here right now, and that there was a solution coming up on both sides of the political aisle. I mean, I don't know if it's a solution, but some movement where both parties are agreeing, which is a pretty big deal as it goes in the log jam of Washington, D.C. here, I would imagine. But that might be a Mercury Jupiter kind of thing, where people have been in disagreement, but suddenly they're like, oh, we're on the same page. So innovative ideas, solutions to problems, inspiration, invention, all things to watch for over the weekend. Breakthroughs intellectually or mentally in your understanding of a subject. Number 3, these all go together. You could see increased confidence verbally, mentally, intellectually, but also pride, like intellectual, like arrogance intellectually, or overstating something. I'll get to that one in a second, actually. Exuberance, just charisma, zeal, potentially like the zealous, fanatical quality of Mercury, Jupiter, especially with Jupiter being in Aries, which can be very gung-ho. But mental pride, exuberance, confidence, especially when you believe something is going to work, or you believe this is the right thing to do and you want to take action like now, like immediately. I would say there's a little bit of a look before you leap in this transit, like a little bit. Be careful of almost like excessive confidence about an idea or a sudden impulse, but also some actions need to be implemented like right away, very quickly. Sometimes, it's really just about the wisdom of knowing when to implement a really great idea. This would all fall under the broad banner of, Mercury Jupiter contact. Number 4 would be big ideas or exaggeration. So this would be like, I've got a big plan. I've got a really big, an idea for a really big event or something like that. It's possible that you could overstate or exaggerate something, but also come up. I mean, innovative ideas, solutions. This is a little bit different in that Mercury Jupiter can come up with big things. For example, someone buys a car, very Mercury Jupiter thing, and they're going to get something that's like a monster car, a monster truck with huge tires and a lift kit and all of that. So the potential for something to be exciting, but like over the top big. And sometimes that's fun. I'm not someone who's like, there's a season for everything. Excessiveness is sometimes, the best thing, is as long as, you're not hurting yourself really, or someone else, I suppose. So big thoughts, big ideas. And along with that, number 5 is income and expenditures. So with Mercury and Jupiter, you're also thinking about big ideas, possibly windfalls. Mercury rules the marketplace in ancient astrology, and Mercury Jupiter contacts, especially those that are fruitful, like a sextile, which is of the nature of Venus, would suggest like a big purchase or big expense. I think you could say, especially with Mercury and Gemini, maybe something technological, or maybe you're deciding to go back to school and you're going to have to take out a big loan, or so anything. The purchase could be something Jupiter in Aries like, or Mercury in Gemini like, but it might be big and expensive. On the other hand, you could get a windfall, or you could catch a really nice financial break somehow, and it could alleviate a big burden, or it could take a significant chunk off from a big burden. For example, having some level of student loan forgiveness, maybe be a very Mercury Jupiter sextile kind of thing. Anything with Mercury Jupiter could involve a major fluctuation of income and expenditures, but not just now. It could be something that's in the future, an idea that you're going to implement that you hope will have, a payoff that will be lucrative. And it very well could be. This energy, Jupiter, tends to be about things that grow. You want to make sure that I would look sort of the look before you leap. Be careful of shoving all chips into the center of the table, taking big gambles that are highly risky, especially if you're being sort of seduced by something that you're really attracted to. But at the same time, this combination strikes me as, potentially lucrative, entrepreneurial. Well, like, let's try something new. Let's strike out on our own. Maybe it's a side hustle. Those are, I feel like pretty much every client I see has something that they do on the side these days. It's been like that for many years now. Could there be some new side project, a little extra income on the side, a new idea? These are the things that I'm watching for with Mercury in the sextile to Jupiter, but especially that first one where there might be some kind of history behind a process. And this to me would be a breakthrough or a really positive step forward in a process. Like, all signs point to this being a very expansive and generous transit. There's a few bewares, but it's also next week. One of the things we're going to be looking at is Venus's entrance into Gemini. the thing that's really cool about that one is that as Venus enters Gemini next week, it's going to be co-present with its host, Mercury. And you're going to see a lot of good fortune rolling in from a lot of people anyway. This is my, my best guess. I'm sure I'll see it in my clients' lives next week. I have no doubt I'll hear lots of stories about it, that you're going to see, relatively speaking, good things rolling into the whole sign house of Gemini in your birth chart, because the host is there, which makes it a very effective energy. When Mercury's in its own sign, it just can deliver the goods, so to speak, depending, of course, on what's going on in your birth chart. But when Venus then comes up in there alongside of Mercury, then you have the goddess of good fortune along with Mercury in its own sign. And that has the look of, like, almost like Oprah, like, you get a car and you get a car. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. I think that's going to be, I think we're going to take that through the 12 signs next week and look at where that, that sort of the relative look of good fortune's coming through for everybody. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. That is what I have for today. A little bit briefer because I'm trying to focus on family and yoga retreat this week, but 5 days a week, that's my commitment. That is my spiritual practice, is to show up and talk about astrology with you guys. So don't forget, like and subscribe, help the channel grow, share your comments. I'd love to hear your stories. If you have a story about Venus, Saturn over the weekend, or if you have a story about Mercury and Jupiter over the weekend, use the hashtag grab. Tell us your story. We'll aggregate those and have another story sharing episode probably soon. Grabbed at nightlightastrology.com if you prefer to email it to us. Just make sure you don't mind that we share whatever you send in. That's what I've got for today. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend, and we will see you again on Monday. Take care, everyone. Bye.